Welcome everyone who's joining us live or by recorded video to this month's Let's Talk Solutions, focusing on closing out the year. A couple of housekeeping items. We will be recording today's presentation, and you'll be able to find this and previous recordings on NPAC's knowledge base. If you have questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We have team members monitoring your questions, and we will make time at the end to discuss some of them live. With that, I'd like to introduce our speakers today. Jeff Armstrong, our Chief Innovation Officer, will be talking about troubleshooting fund statements. And Jill Byrne, our Senior Solutions Engineer, will be reviewing designated grants as well as bulk processing and correspondence. So here is our agenda for the day, talking the designated grants area first, and then going through the bulk processing and correspondence review, and then really talking about the troubleshooting piece. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Jill to go ahead and get us started.
Okay, thank you. So let's, as Amy just mentioned, I'm going to take you guys through some activities that we can do on the designated grants. So the designated grant in the Foundation Cloud Grant System is, manages those in a very specific way. So usually we think of the designated grant as one that's issued from a designated fund. Sometimes organizations refer to these as endowment distributions or a reoccurring grant. So it all kind of falls under the same umbrella there. The donor makes this designation at the time that the fund is created usually. The periodic distribution from that fund, it can be a fixed dollar amount or a specified percentage of the available income. So again, that's the conversation that the donor has with your organization on what their intent is and what they want. But more plainly, the designated grant is a special grant in the system in that it's been established to pay multiple recipients from one fund based on a set financial amount, and that distribution is according to that schedule. So go ahead and advance that, Amy. On the next slide, we talk about the use of to generate the grants option. So how can I manage these? And I'm going to show you a couple of tips and tricks on how to use the web platform to be able to process more than one at a time. But many of you probably are aware that there's a pre-validate step that kind of begins the journey. That pre-validate step is to ensure that all the ducks are in a row, all the T's and I's are dotted and crossed so that everything is there, so that the grant payment can go smoothly onto the check run and then onto the integrated financial system for payment. Of course, the associated grant records refer to that parent or the designated grant record. So they're always cross-referencing to each other. Just important to know kind of what's on which one. Communications and workflow are on the grant record, not the designated grant record. And then the payment history, that is located on that designated grant record. So in other words, depending on where you are at with your processes, you may be accessing either one of those or both, depending on what you're looking to do. To end the payment cadence. So we often get this question a lot on our support team is how do I end this? Maybe the donor has decided not to continue those payment cadences, for whatever reason. Of course, the donor can manage this on the portal, but if you're taking care of it on the back end, you can certainly access that designated grant record and just add an end date to that end date field. Just put a date in there, and that's going to end and stop it from progressing. But do be sure that the date that you enter is prior to the next scheduled date. That's very important. And again, that then is going to end the payment schedule in the system. on that note, let's jump in and see a lot of this in action. Give me one moment here. I gotta steal the share. From Amy here. There it is. All righty. Hopefully you're all seeing my screen.
Yes, we are. Thanks, Jill.
You're welcome. All right. So let's get going here. Let's start in our designated grants directory here. So all of you have this capability in the web view. Most of everything that I'm showing you today is going to be within the Foundation Cloud Grant System from the web view here, not in Classic. So as I bring up my designated grants, this is the entire list. And we're presented with a couple of options here as we're looking at this data list, which is where I'm going to spend most of my time for this section. So you can use these data lists in the system to create a list based on certain filters. Like, sure, I could create a query, but I'm a big fan of working smart, not hard. And to get what I need, a lot of times I can just rearrange and manipulate this view to get the list that I'm looking for. So we're going to begin by locating the designated grants that do not have any grant payments generated yet. So let's go in and we're going to choose the columns that I'm seeing displayed below. I'm going to clear them all out and just grab a handful of them, the ones that I want to see. So let's do grants created. I want that ID. I need the open button and grants created. All right, so that's changed my view down so that I'm going to move these little guys around, try and get that column to come over. There we go. All right, so now I'm seeing all of my designated grants, and I can see whether or not there's been grant records created for them. I'm really trying to find these ones here that have 0. So let's take this a step further, and we'll filter down so that we're looking at just the ones that are missing any grant payments. So here we go. Now I'm down to this handful of records. And again, this is an important step because we're establishing the donor's intent. The designated grant record is the keeper of the details of that donor's request. So we need a grant record in order to contain the payments. So this is a really quick way to identify those that are missing it. So I'm going to show you some other efficiencies here. See, notice all these little boxes. I'm going to load them all up, and the system is then going to present me with a way to be able to process all at once. Sure, I could go into each one of these one at a time, but here we go. Nice efficiency option here. We're going to pre-validate. So what's that doing? The pre-validate is an opportunity to take a look at the data integrity. This pre-validate step is required prior to generating the grants. The validation is looking at related records, such as the payee, ensuring they have corresponding vendor record within an integrated finance system. It's also validating the recipient is present, the fund set up correctly, and other required fields have been filled out. So right away, it's telling me, it's kind of giving me a little sense of what's going on here. It's telling me, hey, your designated grant number 10, it's not ready. 11 is, 26 is. So it's telling me that I've got some that are ready, but maybe some that are not quite ready. So let's go into number 10 here. So, and I'll diagnose a couple of these so you guys can see that in action. So number 10, the system's trying to alert me here. It's saying, hey, in this case, the intent of the donor is to give a percentage. But what it's trying to say is your percentages for the giving isn't adding up to 100%. Oops, clicked outside of that. All righty, so we've got to put in a dollar value here. There we go. Now we can clear all of that out and go back to my list. Whoops, one too far back. All right, so now we're back in our list. Let's go ahead and filter again, because I lost my filter because I backed up one too many times. User error. All righty, so now we've got those same ones here that have the 0 grants created. Bring those up, pre-validate, and then be able to move forward. Now, I didn't fix all of those because of the interest of time, but so we're just going to go forward with the 5 of them that are ready to have their grants records created. So it's giving me a little synopsis, a little results of what happened. And notice that my filtering now is reduced down to the ones that I want to keep focusing on and resolving so that we can get the grants created. So that's one way to be able to use your existing data list view to kind of filter and identify some records that you may want to prepare for that next step in the process. While I'm here, do notice that you have the ability to export. So this kind of little upward arrow guy here, that's your ability to take the list that you're looking at in this view and be able to export it out into a CSV file. And then of course you can open that with Excel. So I'll show you that here in a few moments. We're going to take a look at our data list and get it now to show me those designated grant payment schedules with upcoming payments, say in the next 3 months. So it's year end, we're looking ahead. What can we do to prepare the payments for the upcoming quarter? So let's do the same data list here. This time we're going to add some other things to our view here. I don't need the grants created so much anymore. I'm going to leave the ID and that open, but what I'm really looking for to add is my schedule date. Go ahead and apply that. So I've got some here that are showing up. Get that filter off there. And we're going to take that a little further. So let's filter on that scheduled date. The system gives you some great criteria to load up in there. So you can see any of those that are overdue, meaning the time passed by, we should have had a grant payment issued, maybe the ones that are due this month. Or for my purpose, I'm looking ahead. So I want to see what's coming up for my next quarter. So now we've filtered this down to those that have payments coming up here, January, February, or March. Oh, and this month for that matter. And so right from here, again, I can export these out, get them into a list. I may want to add a little more, right? Because I've got the ID, but maybe I want to have some fund information in there before I export. You can add some more information here, maybe the requester, apply, get all that type of information in here, and then again, be able to very quickly export that information out, pull it right into, and in my case, I'm using Excel, and now I have that list out of the system and can work at it. So I'm just showing you super quick, easy, simple things that you can do to produce lists and get data out of the system. All righty, so let's see, we're getting ready for our next quarter here. So let's load all these up, just thinking of some work I can do ahead of time. Pre-validate is always the first step, and then being able to generate the grants. So let's pop into grant number 2 here and take a look at it as it's letting me know that so you guys can see what happened there. Grant number 2, All right, so what has happened within my record here is it has created the next grant for us and got it basically ready to go. And that's the one here down here on 1216. That's the grant record that it just added for us. Now, at this point, of course, in your processes, next you would be adding it to a check run. Okay, so some things to note on the records. While we've got this designated grant record open, it's always a good idea. So like next, I'm going to take you guys into building a query. It's a good idea to make note of the grant record, the number, the ID number, as that might be helpful later when I'm going to build that query. Review that next scheduled date so that you can see when the next payment and any previous payments, or if you're seeing things that you're not really expecting, maybe some things for, like in this case, we've got all of our grants there, but if you're looking at the grant history and you're not seeing some grants, it might just be that you need to do the generate grants process, which of course is the same thing that we just witnessed out there on the data list. It's going to take you through the validation, confirming that all the pieces and parts are there that are necessary to progress it forward in the process, and then create the grant record. So moving forward, what if you would like to view a list of all of the upcoming designated grants for next year? So let's go build a query. Under your reporting functional area, we've got queries here. The system comes with some built in, and I'm sure you guys have built some of your own. We're going to build one to look at the designated grants with payments scheduled for the year of 2023. Let's give it a name, designated grants for 2023. Our focus, so this is the system is asking you what record fields are you going to want to query on? And in my case, it's the designated grants. It's not going to be custom, and you certainly can share it across your organization if you want everybody else there with query access to be able to get in, see that query, make changes to it, and so forth. So now we've got the query created. At this point, we need to identify the fields that we want to bring in. So these are various types of components of that designated grant record. So thinking of the tiles that are within the record that contain the fields. So we're going to crack open that designated grant one. Obviously, we want to have that ID. And really what I'm identifying is when I get to the point of the results where I want to see all my data, you're identifying what you want to include within that result sets. What data do I want to see and be able to filter on? So we've got that ID. Let's see, let's grab that next schedule date. That guy's going to be super important. Let's see, we could have the fund name in there. Let's see, let's open up our recipients. Let's grab the recipient name. And I don't need any history. And this one has nothing to do with my online grant request, but just thinking of the portal, what that's essentially saying is, if this came through one of our fund holders using the portal and there's an associated request record, you can certainly pull in information from their request. So I think I got enough to start here. That's enough fields for now. So let's add the filter. And what we want here is our next schedule date. Because I mentioned that I want it to be for 2023, let's go ahead and add the date parameters here, and we want it to end 12/31/2023. Okay, so just to review what I've set up so far is I'm saying out of all of the records in the database, I want you to pull forward for me in this list the designated grants that have a next scheduled date falling between January 1st and December 31st of 2023. Do you want these to sort in a certain way? I'm a big fan of making things kind of logical, so I'm going to go ahead and have it sort by the ID. It'll go by default in ascending order, but notice I can't change that if I need to. And now we're ready for our results. It's just that easy. So now here I have a list of all of my designated grant records that have a scheduled date, a payment that needs to be generated in 2023. Notice that I can, there's my nice little upward arrow guy. If I want to get this out into a list, maybe I want to share it across the organization, I can do that very easily. Also, you can manage them from here. Notice we've got our little green open button. So if you're seeing information that you didn't expect, or you know you need to change something, or make edits right from this list, we can just open. Well, that's a great nudge on my shoulder, reminding me to go ahead and save this first. Let's crack open that top one there. So again, right from my query result list, I can do some record editing. Okay, so that was a lot of information. I'm going to pause there before we move on to my panelists. Do we have questions that we want to answer before we move to the next section? I'm going to show you guys some processing in bulk and correspondence.
There was one question, Jill. Jeff did answer this, but I think it might be worth bringing up. It was, how do you do the due diligence before you generate that check batch? Jeff did talk about how diligence can be tracked in the grant records workflow tile, and those workflow steps can include diligence steps with predefined questions and tasks to complete before marking the step complete.
Exactly. So that's a great question. And at the beginning, I kind of talked about how the designated grant record is a placeholder for the donor intent. And I mentioned that here, you're not going to see workflow and that kind of stuff. It's going to be on the related grant record. And so on the related grant record is where you're going to see the details of the funds. This one has a lot of funds related to it. And there's our golden workflow. So the workflow is attached to the related grant record. And then I mentioned also that the grant record is also going to be where your custom fields, your characteristics, all of those types of things sit on that related grant record. It also is where your correspondence is at.
There's one more question, Jill. This was answered online as well, but might be worth showing. It was about how to link to the parent record of a designated grant. Jeff did detail out about creating the grant and how the grant records, they'll have that parent record pointing back to the designated grant.
Yes.
And on the properties tile.
Yes. And so you're exactly right. That underlying parent record. So again, the designated grant record is kind of the overarching, and that has everything in there that the donor and you have agreed to. And then, so every grant that is generated from that original designated grant or parent record will always be linked there. You can unlink the parent from that. So I'm on the grant record. I can unlink this grant record from the parent record if you choose to do that. And just as Jeff was telling you, don't get dizzy. I'm going to go way down here. My properties are at the bottom. The associated records also show up down in the properties. And since mine has so many funds, that's why you're seeing all these different funds kind of spread out there. But again, that type of information. We try again to make everything efficient for you, meaning every time you see these blue links, this is your opportunity as a user to hop into these related records very quickly, very smoothly. Great questions, guys.
That's it.
Okay, so let's move on to our next agenda item. We're going to look at processing in bulk and correspondence. Okay, so for example, online grant request. It's the end of the year. Let's go into our portal here real quick. As you guys well know, within the portal, our fund holders have the ability to do grant recommendations and do interfund transfers. Those types of features are at their fingertips on the portal. It's end of year. Sometimes there's a big flurry of activity as our fund holders are, making those gifts and doing that type of activity on the portal. And so when those grant recommendations start pouring in, of course, if your user profile in the system is assigned to be able to process those, you're going to receive an alert, new online grant request that's come in. So that's one way. Also, you can come in and drill right into the directory of online grant requests by choosing the grant functional area. And we see all of the submitted grant requests that are coming in from our fund holders. We've seen this data list a few moments ago, same concept. You can personalize this data list, choose which columns you want to see, sort it, filter it, arrange it what makes sense to you. But what I'm taking you here today to show is these bulk processing options. Very quickly, I can select whether it's all of them, or I can certainly cherry pick. Maybe after I've put a filter on and I want to look at some that are maybe only to a specific recipient from a certain fund, however you want to present the data, what makes sense for you in your processes. And then once I load these up, you're going to see it's kind of hidden, or not hidden, but subtle down here in the bottom. But I received some capabilities from the system to be able to progress these at once. So when they come in from the portal, step one is reviewing them. So of course, you're going to want to dive into those records, do any sort of reviewing, whatever activities, due diligence, and so forth that you normally do. But when those are ready and to progress forward, step one is to set them as reviewed, which is great. And then from here, I can go forward and be able to create those grants, decline them. Maybe I want to hold them. I can certainly do that. I can delete them. So point is that you can process these at once. You don't have to go into them one at a time. And straight from here, be able to create my grant records. All right, so that's one option, because again, end of year, things might be coming in pretty fast. So try and use those options there from your submitted online grant requests from your fund holders. Other options that we have to process in bulk, under this batch functional area, you're going to see options such as being able to process proposals, grants, and scholarships. We've shown these before on your on other Let's Talk Solutions, but it's definitely worth examining again now that it's end of year and maybe we've got a lot of activity to take care of. Within my grants batch, I can take a look at workflow. I can manage my workflow from this across more than one grant record. I can add documents if I need to, add any comments. But what I really want you guys to see is this new batch correspondence. throughout all of the batches in the system, you have the ability to create some correspondence, whether that's document from your document templates, or maybe you want to send it electronically through email. All of your templates, of course, appear there for you to be able to send out correspondence straight from while you're working and processing. So that's a really nice efficiency tip. And then also let's take a quick looky-loo at my correspondence templates. This was something we introduced during the October Let's Talk Solutions. So if any of you are experiencing this when you're going into your correspondence templates and you're seeing the ones in red, maybe you didn't get a chance to see that October Let's Talk Solutions, but at that time we announced some updates that were happening across the system, and it included changing the templates. And so if yours are red, it's really super simple to be able to change it so that the template is converted, which is really what you want. All you do is edit it, save it, and now you see it's no longer red. So before I pass the baton to Jeff, who's going to take you through some things, I want to show you out in our knowledge base. So hopefully all of you are familiar with this. What do you have at your fingertips? So let's just do a search. Designated grant. This is all of the articles we have out on our knowledge base related to the designated grant record, processing, how to stop it. We just had that conversation. And so anything you need to know about the designated grant, you can find in our knowledge base. Also, what's here is the past Let's Talk Solutions. So let's go down to that portion of the directory. Here's our Let's Talk Solutions. When we host this event, we always put out a copy of the recording. And don't get dizzy, I'm coming down here to the October one. This one right here, Jeff took us through how to update your correspondence templates. So although I kind of ran through that fast, feel free to access the October Let's Talk Solutions and see that with a little more granularity. Okay, any questions that we want to talk about before Jeff's part in the play?
I think there was someone was having an issue with some errors, but I believe Jeff has answered some of those. Okay. But I think we're ready to move on, Jill.
Awesome. All right, my friend, the baton is yours.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you so much, Jill. Appreciate it. Yeah, so if any other foundations are having issues with correspondence, do some more testing, dig into it, see if there are specific reproducible issues there. And it's entirely possible that your tenant within our cloud environment is not configured properly. So you can open a support ticket and our engineers can get you back up and running. So I'm going to be talking here a little bit about troubleshooting fund statements and the fund summary that you see in the Foundation Cloud community portal for your fund holders. Sometimes you'll see that the line items for the contributions and various issues with these fund statements and fund summaries. So before I do jump in, I'll mention that these are mostly going to be these troubleshooting tips are mostly going to be relevant for those of you who are in GE NXT, regardless of whether these issues are with a report or in GE Classic or in GE NXT. These are issues that are in our cloud environment. Fund statement reports and fund statement summaries for our on-premise customers often read data from the Financial Edge, transaction data from the Financial Edge, gift data from the Razor's Edge or from a CRM system, and then grant data from the grants database and aggregate it all together. Here in our cloud environment, we're syncing some of that information in overnight from a CRM system and from a finance system, and then displaying all that data together. So in our cloud environment, if you're running into some of these issues, then there are some steps you can take on your own to do troubleshooting and possibly get to the bottom of these before you open a support ticket. If this is something you regularly do or that you foresee a need to do, I'd encourage you to take a screenshot real quick, because this has not only some of the common problems, but also some of the possible solutions, some of the troubleshooting steps you could take. And some of these involve doing syncs. So there are 4 slides here. We'll spend most of the time on this slide, but the next couple of slides are going to show you how to do those manual sync steps back in GE Classic. So the first issue that we see somewhat regularly is that a client will report that for a particular fund, the contributions line item doesn't match the gift detail list, right? So at the top, you'll say contributions, $50,000 in contributions were made to the fund, but then the list of gifts, maybe it's only showing $40,000 in gifts that have come in, or maybe it's showing 60,000. And so those numbers don't match. So first of all, figure out which one is wrong. If the contributions line is wrong, it's probably a missing transaction. And so at that, for that, one of the first steps you could take is to run a finance transaction sync for that particular fund. And we'll show you how to do that on the next screen. But if there are missing transactions, then syncing just that one fund, all the transactions for that one fund, will bring the contribution back in. And then when you rerun the report, or when you go back to the fund summary again, you should see an updated contribution line with the correct number in it. If that number is correct and the list of gifts under it is incomplete, then it's likely that the gift information from the CRM system, usually from Raiser's Edge NXT, is incomplete. There may be a missing gift. And so the thing to do there is to run a gift CRM sync. Again, we'll show you how to do that on the next slide. So the contributions detail list is one place where we often see discrepancies. Another one, the second bullet point here, is the grant detail list. So a lot of times you'll have a line item for grants, and then you'll have a breakdown of all those grants that are paid, and the numbers may not match up. So if the grants line is wrong, then the line items come from transactions that have been synced over from the finance system. So again, if that line is wrong, you're going to want to do the same thing that we mentioned above, and to go run a finance transaction sync for that fund and bring in the missing grant transactions. If that number is correct, but the list of grants is incomplete, it could be a filtering issue with the grants that are in your database. So look in the Foundation Cloud grants system for that particular fund record, and you'll see each fund record has a grant history tile. You can go take a look at the grants that are in that grant history tile and see, are there any grants that are missing that should be in that list? And then note that only the paid payments are included in the grant detail list. If a payment has an adjustment that's been, refunded or partially rescinded, it should still have a status of paid and should still show up. But it could be that a payment has been voided and it shouldn't be in there. So I'll take you through a screenshot of that in just a second. And then finally, just any other line item besides contributions and grants, if those don't look right, a finance system transaction sync is likely going to be the answer. So that's a great step you can take to get to the bottom of those issues. So let's walk through real quickly how to do these transaction syncs. Unfortunately, we can't yet do these syncs through Foundation Cloud grants, through the NXT system on the web. This has to be done in our Classic system today. So I've got a couple of screenshots here on how to do this in GE Classic through that admin view. The screenshot on the left shows you how to get there. Once you're running GE Classic, the admin menu has this data sync menu. When you pull that up, it's got a list of all your sync history from the past 24 hours. And then it also shows you all the sync functions that are available and can be run manually. So most of these syncs happen overnight automatically. They're scheduled for you, but you can go in and run these on demand at any time. I've highlighted the 2 relevant ones down there at the bottom. The finance system transaction distribution sync, that's going to bring over missing transactions from the finance system. The next one under that is the CRM system gift sync. We'll talk about that one in just a second. But when you choose that finance system transaction distribution sync, you'll see the screenshot on the right shows you a list of parameters for which you're prompted. By default, that fund number parameter is empty. And so if you want to just sync all the transactions for a particular fund, you can put in that fund number, and that will sync in just the transactions for that fund. Also, the third field from the bottom is the last modified date. This typically defaults to, I can't remember if it's 1 day ago or 7 days ago, but it's got a default in there. If you leave all of these parameters empty, it's going to try to sync every darn transaction from your finance system into GE. And a lot of you have 8, 10, 12 million transactions in your finance system. And this is just going to run for days and days and days and won't be helpful. By default, we put that last modified date in there to filter things to just bring in transactions from the past 7 days. But if you filtered by fund number, then you can go ahead and wipe out that last modified date so that you're bringing in all transactions for a given fund. And all the transactions for a given fund, it's just going to be a few hundred transactions. Even a couple of thousand won't take a real long time. So those other parameters can be added as filters if you want to just do specific transactions. But for the troubleshooting steps we mentioned in the slide before, just syncing in all the transactions for a given fund is going to help fix any issues you've got on the individual line items within a fund statement report or a fund summary in the portal. So this is how we do transaction distribution syncs. Let's go to the next slide and talk about how to do CRM gift system syncs. When you run when you select that sync item from the menu, you're going to get this list of parameters. This doesn't have quite as many parameters as the prior one did. Date added is really only going to allow you to bring in new gifts. You're essentially going to want to bring in gifts that have been new or modified. So we typically leave that first one blank. The last modified is the date. You want to sync all gifts modified on or after this date. So if you want to bring in gift history, if you're having issues with a fund statement that is, for the past 6 months, you could go in and bring in all gifts for the past 6 months, depending on how many gifts your foundation processes. That could be a lot of data. Another option to filter that even further is this third field, which is the constituent ID. That is the constituent of the donor record in the Raiser's Edge. And note that it's not the user-defined constituent ID that you typically see on the screen, but it's the system record ID for a given constituent. So when you're looking in RE-NXT, that constituent ID is up in the URL. When you're looking in the RE, the classic database view, you can go to the properties. Under file menu, you can go to properties and find out the system record ID of that constituent. And you can filter in just the gifts for a particular donor to sync in. The post status, by default, we only bring in gifts which are posted and gifts that are do not post. And we don't bring in gifts that are not yet posted. You may have that overridden in your global settings, but by default, we would leave it at just to bring in the posted gifts. So that you can get the transactions that are going to be relevant for your fund statement resolution. So this is essentially what we're doing here for these two transaction syncs. Again, we're looking at the manual transaction syncs for the finance system transaction distribution sync, and this one is the gift sync. The next screen just shows one of the last steps on looking at the grant history for a fund. If the list of grants paid, the breakdown of all the grants that have been paid, is missing a grant, then come in and take a look at this. This is on the fund record. So in Foundation Cloud Grants, you can pull up the fund record and go to that grant history tile. It'll show you all the grants that have been paid for a particular from a particular fund. You'll notice at the top we have a total amount paid that's only $999. If you look at the column on the right there is the payment status, and notice that only the paid payments are coming in. If you have scheduled payments, if you have void payments, those aren't going to get included in the query that brings back that list of grant payments. So this may help you identify where the missing payments are. So hope this has been helpful. Hopefully you can take these steps and try to solve some of these issues on your own with the fund statements. If you still have issues beyond this, of course, please open a ticket, and our engineers will be happy to help you. Our support staff will be happy to help you get this resolved. But hopefully this helps. And I'm going to jump down real quick and look at the chat. See if we've got any questions.
The only question that came there was about the copy of the slides, and I do want to remind everyone we will provide the slides, we provide the video recording of this so that you'll have all the discussion points that went along with the good examples that were in the presentation.
Yep, great question, Dora. Thank you very much. These last 4 slides that I've just walked through, I would like to get our documentation folks to take these slides and maybe add to them and enhance them, and maybe put together a knowledge base article on troubleshooting fund statements and fund summaries, so that this is available and accessible through our knowledge base. So
That'd be great.
yeah.
Okay. If you come up with other questions after this presentation, please feel free to reach out, and one of us can help you or direct you to who can help you. So I want to encourage you all to reach out. Our support team is here as well, that be willing to help with some of these questions. We also wanted to let you know that we've had such a great year with our Let's Talk Solutions series in 2022. We are hoping to plan our 2023 year. So we'll be launching a year-end Let's Talk Solutions survey this week that I encourage you all to fill out and give us ideas on what we can do for next year, as well as what went well this year. I want to thank Jill and Jeff for all their great information today, and please reach out and if we can be of service. We'll see you all at the Let's Talk Solutions on Wednesday, January 18th for the kickoff to our 2023 series. Thanks all.